So we're going to move on to the last case study then, and we'll be talking to a representative from Maple Leaf Foods. It'll be Debbie Schwartzentruber.
Good afternoon, everyone. When they asked me to come and speak at the aging conference, at first I thought, well, I guess I could dig in and really look at our aging data, and that's what I was going to do at first. It has never shown up big for us, and so it was never anything that I had looked at. And I found some of our speakers this morning very interesting in that regard because it sort of validated what we thought. It's very interesting that shortly after I was asked and was going to bring you a bunch of data, we had a plant manager who said, I'll be explaining about our bold goal, but we had a plant manager who said, you guys come on in here because if we're going to meet the bold goal, I don't know how I'm going to do that in our poultry facility with our aging workforce. So my boss, Mike Walsh, who isn't with me here today, and I apologize for that, he couldn't be here. Mike and I went in, met with him and some of his management team, and they wanted us to look at their aging population in the poultry plant. And so his health and safety manager was assigned to that and found that in fact the aging workers were not the ones that were the issue at all. And what we did find certainly was it would certainly be what we heard this morning, between the ages of 35 and 44. And I see so many questionnaires every year that it was more in my mind that way. However, there was some very interesting other points that I thought, wow, that is right on the money. So, for example, Peter Smith talked about today arthritis, diabetes, heart disease, and depression. And one of the things that we did about a year ago was we surveyed all our safety managers, and in relation to MSI, we said to them, what are the issues you're dealing with? And so they told us things like rotator cuff and all that. And we do a monthly educational session across Canada where they can come on net meetings and learn more about that. But some of the ones that we just covered this past year were diabetes, arthritis, heart disease, and while they did not articulate depression, they asked for EAP and regional complex pain syndrome, which was exactly what they were saying are some of the areas that are of concern. So as far as aging, when I came back, we actually came back and said, look, we're so busy, we don't know if we can come. And they said, well, what's going on there? Because there is a lot of stuff happening at Maple Leaf Foods right now. It's actually very exciting. And someone asked about culture today. And I could certainly identify with that question, because if you would have asked me 5 years ago what I thought about culture, I think I would have said, oh, for heaven's sakes, like, just do ergonomics, because you got to fix what's wrong. And my own manager, Mike, again, he's just a dynamo. I really wish you could meet him. We actually had arguments about this, because I said, look, if they have to reach up and pick a ham off of a conveyor, no matter how culturally we tell them to be careful when you lift the ham off the conveyor, they're still going to get injured. And he gave me that, but I now give him something back, where I saw that embracing culture and rolling out a new culture made people willing and more bought into doing ergonomics. And so I think that's what is key here. I'll tell you a few key points. There is so much to say that I realize that in 15 minutes you really can't say it all. Mike Walsh came into the organization a few years ago, and I just want to say a few words about him. He turned our organization really upside down. As you know, Maple Leaf had a recall a few years ago, and out of that came something called the Safety Promise. And at first it didn't even talk about the safety of our employees in the organization, and then eventually, before Mike was even there, they did change the wording and say, in fact, yes, we will include employees in there. So it talks about a safe, great tasting food produced in a safe working environment. Mike came into the organization and observed for a little while, and I should tell you a little bit about him. He was a floor employee who went back for, got into safety, went back for his degree, went on for his master's, and interestingly had his, he is blind in one eye. Somebody was mowing his lawn while he was a safety manager, mowing his lawn, had taken the guard off the lawnmower, and a stone in a freak accident while he was going to a safety conference, hit him in the eye, and he's blind in one eye, and laid in his hospital bed for, like, he was laid out flat for about 6 months in pain. So he's very passionate about safety. And when we talk about, but Mike, we've had a 10% reduction in injuries. We have, like, Maple Leaf has done well. Each year we've done well. And he goes, and how many people does that translate to that were hurt? I rest my case. You know, he just, 0 is all that he will hear, and he is not afraid of anyone. I've never worked for anyone like this. I've never worked as hard either. We are working hard. So we have, what he did was, shortly after he got there, he, like I said, he observed, and he, you know, got his strategy in mind, and he decided he's going to see Michael McCain. Michael McCain is our CEO, a very powerful CEO. He went with him to a big strategy. We'll see bits of it today. But one of his big things was that we had a bold goal, that we were going to, for the first time in the meat industry, the only thing I can compare it to is DuPont. If we make this, we are going to be unique. And so far, so good. We're tracking very well. So his bold goal was that we are going to have less than 1 total recordable incident rate by 2016. That is huge. We always felt good if we were tracking at 7, and a couple of years ago we were 7. This year's goal was 3.5, and we're below that right now. It has had an impact across the organization. So it is a bold goal, and we're all working hard to achieve that. And when I say that, this is not just safety people. There's a lot of points here, and each one of them is so important. I could talk about each one of them for a period of time, but I'm going to try to just touch on a few that are extremely important, because this is really the slides Mike would have shared with you. One of his first things was senior leadership buy-in, and so quarterly OHS plant performance and follow-up by the CEO. So what that means in reality is our plants are quartiled, and so remember I said the goal this year was 3.5. Anyone below that 3.5 would start to show up orange, and if they were significantly, or I should say above it, if they were significantly above it, they would turn out red. And at the quarterly time when we measure them, they get a call from Michael McCain, a direct call. And so they're prepared and coached how to work through this call. They are absolutely having a fit, the plant managers. So for the first time, and every single one of those plant managers who have received that call has had significant improvements, because they are so overwhelmed by the thought that Michael McCain is going to be calling them, and they need to speak to why they are in the trouble they are and how they're not contributing to the bold goal, blah, 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 blah. Michael McCain's actually very nice to them, but that just gives you some perspective on suddenly what's happening in the organization. Quarterly update meetings. So our senior team, quarterly, we have a net meeting with Michael McCain, and we walk through some of the results, and we point out the opportunities in plants, and he knows exactly which plants. So if he's visiting a plant, he can speak to that. I should have said, too, that the good plants also get a call. So the top plants also get a call from Michael McCain. It's not just all punitive. Significant event follow-up. So if there's an extreme injury, which we've hardly had any, but Michael McCain will also call the plant. So there will be people on the call, and he will call to find out what happened, what are you doing about it, the whole thing. I'll go through the next ones a little more quickly, but there's a lot of work behind them. So improved OHS metrics, so everybody has a scorecard. We also have an ergonomics scorecard. Supervisors have a scorecard. They get a maturity level assessment, so plants are assessed. I'll show you kind of what that looks like on another slide. All of them go through a full plant perception survey, so how do the employees feel about working at Maple Leaf in this particular plant, and they're scored. Safety and health reduction plan, they all have a business plan. Performance assessment, they get audited, so if they're doing poorly, a group of us will come in and we will audit the plant. We will be there for 2 or 3 days looking at just everything, talking to the people, interviewing, trying to find out what's going on, how can you do better. It's not, again, punitive. It's meant to bring them, we're here to help you. We're here to get you out of the red. And that can be for a very severe incident as well. So they could be in the green, but they have a severe incident and the team may go in for something like that. I would say that one of the things that Mike has brought to the organization in a big way is improved communication. So Mike doesn't just communicate to safety managers. he spends most of his days just communicating, I would say. He is all over the place, talking to VPs. He's just constantly getting their buy-in. So if we're going to do something, he's out there talking to the VP and telling this is why you got to do it, and here's the numbers, and da-da-da-da-da. It's quite powerful, I would say. So he's very big, and he's very big on us communicating. I have learned from him how to communicate my results better. So quietly, I would have had good results, and I wouldn't have said anything to anybody. And he is big on get it out there. They got to hear that. They got to know that. They got to understand that. They got to buy into that. We have quarterly town hall meetings, so that's our whole health and safety group, and plant managers are invited to that. We have a quarterly newsletter, and that's about 5 pages long, and we celebrate certain things and people and plants, and it's very visual and very colorful. We have twice a year conferences. One of the conferences, all of the plant managers come, and the other one, it's more health and safety managers. Plant managers can come. Anyone else can come too. We tend to have, we see people we've never seen before. Michael McCain always speaks there. And those general meetings have a theme, which I've never seen before in quite such an interesting way. So for example, one of our themes was, are you working on the right things? Because as a team, we felt they don't necessarily measure their own problems in their own plants. So in the past, we might have given them a theme, everybody work on this. And that might not have been their problem. And so now when we go in, we want to see, what are you working on? Why are you working on it? How did you measure that? Are you sure that you're working on the right thing? So the big buzz little line is, are you working on the right things? And that includes me. So you'll see with the Ergonomics program, it's important for me, instead of them just calling me in to work on something little. If I'm going, I should be going after the things you can't handle. So we do it in that way as well. We've set up a big SharePoint site with resources so that they can get to all the information they need. We are very analytical in that we analyze their data, as well as compensation claims and costs. So we've not only looked at where our injury is coming from, but where is our cost coming from, and I'll show you a quick slide on that. And then our goal is to save $1 million on compensation each year. This is just looking at the cultural model, and so they're all measured on that, whether they're, and this is the DuPont model, and most of our sites are still at 1 or 2. We have not gotten to 3 or 4, I don't think, in any of our facilities, although we have some very good performing facilities. So I want to tell you how it has affected the Ergonomics program. So just before Mike really got going on the strategy, this was one of the things we were going to do, but it really empowered it. I think it's far more successful because of some of the things that he was doing in the background. So the scope and the objectives of our project, we wanted to tackle things in a different way. In the past, one of the things that happened is that everybody was doing ergonomics and everybody was trained and learned, but there was no responsibility specifically anywhere, and so plants could call me whenever they wanted to. And I would go in because they called me, and not necessarily knowing that I was going after the best opportunity in our organization. So we wanted to change that structure to push some of that responsibility in a greater way into the plants. So we wanted it to be both proactive and reactive. In other words, find out where your problems are and get them fixed, but also don't let new problems come into the organization. And all of this was in support of our bold goal. We looked at our costs. This just gives you a brief idea of one of the things that we did to help us save money, because we wanted everybody to have buy-in, and we knew that plants, there were people who would buy into the whole thing, don't hurt a person, and there were many people who would buy into, are there labor savings, is there cost savings, what does an injury really cost us? And so what we found here was that we knew that musculoskeletal disorders were often about half of our injuries. They're dropping, interestingly, very significantly, but even when we were dropping, always, they were about half. So if we came down 10%, strain injuries were still about half of those injuries. But for the first time, we looked at what is a significant injury. And so we decided, let's look at all the injuries from 2008 to 2012 that cost us more than $25,000. So those could have ranged from $25,000 to a maxed out claim at over $400,000. And we took those claims and said how often were they occurring in the organization and what was the average cost of them. And we brought some of that information for the first time back to Michael McCain. And he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that some of our injuries were costing us this much, and it was a small amount of our injuries were costing us a lot of the money that the company was spending. So it was really helpful. You can see too that slips and falls were a big item, and we've done a big project on that. I won't get into that. The key elements were project guidance, so it was imperative that people prioritize their injuries. So remember I said that when we went into the plant or when we checked up on them, we want to know, what are you working on? Show me your spreadsheets. Why are you working on that? Are you sure you should be working on that? As opposed to this. We have central reporting, so we report on their projects. This year we're going to have quarterly sharing, so in other words, all poultry groups will call into one call. I can't see what it says, Richard. How many? 2. Okay, I better hurry. Okay, I'm going to skip through this then because this is kind of quick. I think one of the key things that I want to say then about that, our ergonomics program that we changed, and I think is really important to its success, is I had heard panel discussions many times about how who should it be, the engineer or the health and safety person? Whose responsibility should ergonomics be? And so we decided to take a two-pronged approach and made designates in every plant, one of them being a project manager or engineer from the plant that they could determine. So we gave them education telling them here's what's coming, and then the other one being a health and safety person who had time to dedicate to the projects. And then we went in, we brought several of those people together, trained them over 3 days, and made the complete responsibility for prioritizing, tracking, getting capital, implementing. All of that became theirs, and we would track their projects, and we would call and check or go to the plant and check, okay, you've got 4 projects, what are they? Let's go out on the floor, I want to see them, how many of them are done, what did you do, what about this? And then they communicate back and forth with us as well. There are other responsibilities, so the Joint Health and Safety Committee, it can be involved. We do not have plant teams. What we do have is task-specific teams. So in so-and-so's plant, if they got an issue in packaging, employees from packaging would be joining that team along with the manager from packaging. So that's one of the main changes that we've made. And this is a tool that we use. It's a matrix that simply, they fill it out and it gives them numbers and tells them when to bring us in. So if they've got capital dedicated and they're not sure what the solution is and it's technology and they need a lot of help, then this would score a certain number, and if it's over 280, it means we want to talk with you further about it, and we may help them or we may not. If it scores under 280, it's not as likely that we will dedicate our time to help them. Not that we won't, but it should be it seems to be working, that it gives us a good number. The results, the bold goal is the target of less than 1 by 2016, and so we set in relation to that with our goal of 3.5 this year, knowing that our injuries were about half of the rest of injuries. We set our target TRIR of 1.75, and right now we're tracking at 1.39. The plants are also quartiled in ergonomics, so I know at any time if they're in the red, I know I want to get to see them. I want to know why they're not getting these projects done or whatever. And we follow up on them. From last year to this year, we've seen a 36% decrease in strains, so it's the first time we've ever jumped like that. We often had 10%, we've never seen 36%, and we report all of this is shared with everyone. I have to say my 19% is wrong there, that should be 58%, but this is just a quick picture of this year's projects. So we have 17 projects complete, 8 are approved but not implemented, a total of 43 projects, and a percent completion rate of 40%. So they're tracking really well. This is just a quick shot of what the injury themselves look like. And my time is up. Shall I field any questions, Richard, or?
I think we need to move.
No worries.